Hey guys, welcome to the stream. This is ARRIAGADA coming to you live from Opaskwayak Cree Nation. We're here for the 2023 Chief and Council General Elections, and this is day 2. We're now doing the council ballots. We just took a break to reset the stream, and we're back now with the fresh stream. And this is going to be the last stream for the day. Oops. Forgot to fix that. This will be the last stream of the day, and we're going right through. So there's 3 bundles left. We're about to get going. Just waiting for the talliers to come back so we can get going. I try to reset as quick as possible. And I'll share this one here. If you guys can share the stream, I'd appreciate it as well. All right, so it looks like we're about to get going here. And we have Ashley taking over the mic for a little bit, so there's not going to be a graph for her when she's speaking, but you'll be able to hear her voice clearly. When Steph comes back, then I'll put on this banner for her as well. But I think we're about to get going, so I'll take mine off and we'll get this going.
Can we have the talliers stand up, please? Okay, you guys ready to go? Ray, I need your headset on. Put your headset on. Okay, we're going to start with the first ballot. Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Edwin Jeb, John Paul Martin, Dale Knudsen, and Joel Pele. The next ballot is Joel Pele. Next ballot is Rick Constant, Riley Helcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jeb, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Lachlan. Where's Courtney? You didn't mark her, right? Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Riley Helcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Riley Helcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, and Joel Pele. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin, and Justin Spence, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Alice Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Matilda Laughlin, Chris Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Rick Constant, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, sorry, John Paul Martin, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Michael Bignell, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Riley Helcrow, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Alice Bignell, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Matilda Laughlin, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, and Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Riley Helcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Matilda Laughlin and Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Riley Helcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Chris Young, and Matilda Laughlin, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Okay. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Justin Spence, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Janice Flett, Riley Helcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, John Paul Martin, Dale Knudsen, and Franklin Young. Sorry. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Janice Flett, Riley Helcrow, Edwin Jebb, and Dale Knudsen. Dale. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, John McKenzie, and Justin Spence. Next ballot, Dale Knudsen and Justin Spence. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, and Justin Spence. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, John McKenzie, and Joel Pelly. Got it? Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Justin Spence, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Riley Helcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Justin Spence, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Next ballot, Rick Constant and Justin Spence. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, next ballot, Rick Constant, Riley Helcrow, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, Justin Spence, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Derek Constant, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, and Justin Spence. Next ballot, John McKenzie, Charlene Spence, and Justin Spence. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, and Justin Spence. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, next ballot, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, and Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, and Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, and John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, and Justin Spence. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Janice Flett, Dale Knudsen, Charlene Spence, and Justin Spence. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Dale Knudsen, Sean Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Alice Bignell. Can you hear me now? No, just kidding. Alice Bignell.
Maybe you're unplugged. You just have to use
Hello? Who had Diana Valentine?
no, you left
Oh,
off.
okay, Alice. Carlito, did you mark down Alice? Okay. Okay, Courtney Hester, Charlene Spence, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Janice Flett, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Alice Bignell, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, and Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, one side, Dale Knudsen.
Can you hear us though?
Can you hear me? Maybe you're
We're almost done. Oh. Do you just want to listen without them?
Do you just want to take the headphone off?
Just take them off.
Anita, did you mark down
Or
Dale?
did you leave?
Right here, Dale. Sorry. Vince. Vince. Okay. Anita,
Anita.
did you mark off Dale when I said his name? Can't lie. Just
Verifier.
kidding. Yeah? Okay. Okay, ready? Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, and Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, and Joel Pelly. Sorry. Next ballot, Courtney Hester. Next ballot, Courtney Hester, Rick Constant, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, and Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Charlene Spence, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Louise Contois, Janice Flex, Savannah Henderson, Matilda Laughlin, and Charlene Spence. Yep. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Edwin Jebb, and Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Riley Helcrow, Dale Knudsen, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, John McKenzie, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Edwin Jebb. Who's Edwin? Oh, yeah, okay. Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, and Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, and Justin Spence. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Dale Knudsen. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Chris Young, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, and Franklin Young. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, and Justin Spence. Next ballot, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Riley Helcrow, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, and Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Riley Helcrow, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, and Chris Young. Next ballot, Jared Constant, Rick Constant, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, and John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Rick Constant, Janice Flett, Courtney Hester, and Chris Young. That was her ballot. That pile. Unless he just takes it all. Fine. 8:05. I'll take over. Do we have an extra one, Rod? No?
My computer went slower.
It is?
It's
Okay.
like 10 seconds.
Oh,
for
okay.
buffering.
Just go back on the other one then. It should remember the password, yeah.
I am on yours again.
Oh.
Because it was, my bar was like real low.
Did you refresh?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hello. Hello. Testing. I tried. No, it's okay.
number is this, MJ bundle? What bundle is this? Okay. Okay, guys. Bundle 13. Okay, ballot. Diana Valentine, Alice Bigno, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, John McKenzie, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Edwin Jebb, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Janice Flett, John McKenzie, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, John McKenzie, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Tracy, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Alice Bignell, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Riley Halcrow, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Edwin Jebb, next ballot, Michael Bignell, Janice Flett, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Michael Bignell, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Chris Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence. Who? Vince, do you need a new marker? Where's the markers? Someone give him one. Thank you. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Riley Halcrow, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Janice Flett, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Matilda Laughlin. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Dale Knutson. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Janice Fett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, John Mackenzie, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Yep, Riley. Next ballot, John Mackenzie. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Charlene Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Chris Young. Next ballot, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Chris Young. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Riley Hellcrow, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Edwin Jebb. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Riley Hellcrow, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Michael Bignell, Louise Contois, Riley Hellcrow, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Chris Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Dale Knudsen, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Riley Hellcrow, Matilda Laughlin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence. John McKenzie. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Riley Hellcrow, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Janice Flett, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Riley Hellcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John McKenzie, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Riley Hellcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, John Paul Martin, Chris Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Chris Young. Next ballot, Riley Halcrow, Chris Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Edwin Jebb. Next ballot, Derek Constant, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Dale Knutson. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Chris Young. Next ballot, Riley Halcrow, Edwin Jebb, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Riley Halcrow, Dale Knutson, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Derek Constant, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, no, sorry, not Dale. Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, John McKenzie, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Dale Knutson, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence. Next ballot, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Okay, 14th ballot, or bundle. No break, sorry. We're almost done. Can you hang in there? Yeah, okay, okay, alrighty. Okay, ballot. Louise Contois, Dale Knutson, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, Courtney Hester, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Janice Flett, Courtney Hester. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Janice Flett, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Dale Knutson, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Chris Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Valentine, Alice Bignell, Louise Contois, Matilda Laughlin, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Rick Constant, Janice Flett, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Chris Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Matilda Laughlin, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Alice Bignow, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Alice Bignow, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Edwin Jebb. Next ballot, Alice Bignow, Michael Bignow. Next ballot, Alice Bignow, Michael Bignow, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignow, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Chris Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignow, Derek Constant, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignow, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, John McKenzie, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignow, Michael Bignow, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignow, Michael Bignow, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, Charlene Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, Franklin Young, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Charlene Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Edwin Jebb, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence. Oh, sorry. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, John McKenzie, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Rick Constant, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Courtney Hester, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Derek Constant, Louise Comtois, Courtney Hester, John McKenzie, Charlene Spence, Joel Pelly. Yeah. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Joel Pelly, next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Riley Halcrow, Janice Flett, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell. Next ballot, Michael Bignell. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Michael Bignell, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Michael Bignell. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Michael Bignell. Next ballot, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Janice Flett, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Rick Constant, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, John McKenzie, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Riley Halcrow, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Rick Constant, Janice Flett, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, John McKenzie, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Riley Halcrow, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Who? Okay. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Fifteenth bundle. trying to do over there? What are they trying to do over there? Yep. Last bundle. Ready to go, girls, over there? Okay. Ballot. Michael Bignell, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Louise Comtois. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Courtney Hester. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Janice Flett, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Comtois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Franklin Young. Franklin Young.
Oh, okay. It's gotta be ready to go.
Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Rick Constant, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Janice Flett, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Louise Comtois, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Joel Pelly, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Did I say John McKenzie? Okay, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Riley Hellcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, John McKenzie, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, John McKenzie, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Charlene Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Derek Constant, Louise Comtois, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Derek Constant, Matilda Laughlin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Derek? Yeah. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Rick Constant, Louise Comtois, Savannah Henderson, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Derek Constant, Courtney Hester. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Riley Hellcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Comtois, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Matilda Laughlin. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Derek Constant, Louise Comtois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Louise Comtois, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John McKenzie, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Charlene Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Comtois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, next ballot, Rick Constant, John McKenzie, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen. Next ballot, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Louise Comtois, Janice Flett, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Chris Young. Next ballot, Riley Halcrow, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Edwin Jebb, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Rick Constant, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Louise Contois, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Louise Contois, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Louise Contois, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, John McKenzie, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Courtney Hester. Next ballot, Rick Constant. Next ballot, Rick Constant, John McKenzie. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Contois, Riley Halcrow, Matilda Laughlin. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Chris Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, John Paul Martin, John McKenzie, Justin Spence, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Savannah Henderson, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly, Chris Young. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Alice Bignell, Rick Constant, Louise Comtois, Janice Flett, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knudsen, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John McKenzie, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, John McKenzie, Chris Young. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Courtney Hester, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Comtois, Janice Flett, Edwin Jebb, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Louise Comtois, Janice Flett, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Matilda Laughlin, Charlene Spence. Matilda Laughlin. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Chris Young, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Alice Bignell, Joel Pelly. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knudsen, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Louise Comtois, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, Justin Spence, Franklin Young. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Dale Knudsen, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence, Justin Spence, Chris Young. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knudsen, John Paul Martin, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Rick Constant. Oh, what? Charlene? Okay. Did you mark Rick Constant? Okay, thank you. Edwin Jebb, Matilda Laughlin. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant, Riley Halcrow, Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, John McKenzie, Franklin Young. That's part of that 100. That's 100. That's a bundle. $922. Okay, I'll read these last 6 here. Yeah, that last bundle is done, and these are just 6 I'm reading. Okay, ballot, Louise Contois. Next ballot, Michael Bignell, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, Janice Flett. Next ballot, Derek Constant, Rick Constant. Next ballot, Rick Constant, Savannah Henderson, Edwin Jebb, Dale Knutson, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence. Next ballot, Diana Ballantyne, Louise Contois, Janice Flett, Matilda Laughlin, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Charlene Spence. Next ballot, Janice Flett, Courtney Hester, Dale Knutson, Matilda Laughlin, Charlene Spence. Talliers, if we can just get your markers, and let's give our talliers and verifiers a hand. Mark how many I'm going to need my election workers to help tally the results there. $925. Huh? Yeah, there's something. Yeah, something went wrong. All the top numbers stopped moving, and then the bottom numbers. It's fine. I'll fix it. Yeah. I know. Okay, I'm just mentioning here there was 24 rejected ballots for councillor. 14 of them there was too many choices. 2 of them were blank, no choice. 8 of them had mistakes, for a total of 24 rejected ballots for councillor. Okay, just give us a few minutes to do the tally, put the numbers up, and then we can declare the elected, okay? Thank you.
All right, so they're just going to tally up the numbers here, and then we're going to get the results coming up right away. It's the moment that everybody's been waiting for. Well, I gotta wait till all the numbers are tallied up. There's no point in me showing you guys a tabulation until all the numbers are added up. There'll be an official announcement once all the numbers are tallied up. I'll take this time to say thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Those of you that liked and shared the stream today, I appreciate that as well, especially the ones that shared it on YouTube. I'd like to also thank the community of OCN for inviting me to come out and to cover your event. I hope you guys enjoyed the coverage. There was a couple of moments here and there, but I thought we did pretty good. At least I hope you guys are satisfied with the service that I provided throughout the last couple of days. They're just adding up the numbers now. And I'm going to close those bins so I can see because there's a lot of stuff going on. What's up, man? That's the way they were saying it. Knudsen? Nice to meet you, man. Congratulations. I can't see the numbers that are trying to enter it. Well, and the worst thing is that they organized this all in mixed up. It wasn't even alphabetical order, so it's like even hard to see it. 4. Yeah, that would be good, man, because then I can get it all done. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah, she will. 28, 248 for Charlene. 474. That one I got. Preston 480. Diana, her numbers 2. I got the numbers, man. I'm good.
You got them all?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm just trying to get it set up here, man. We're just waiting for the final numbers, but they're all tallied up. Everything's added up. We're just waiting for, I'm not sure exactly what, but confirmation on the numbers. And Chief Electoral Officer Stephanie Carnes is doing that right now. Just a few more minutes.
I don't know where this mic is. Oh, hello. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm just officially gonna just go over the numbers and officially declare the results. I know everybody's kind of on, but we have some people on live still, so just to go over that last step we need to do. And then I'm gonna need a witness that I took all the numbers from the flip chart, which was the official record. I put it on the statement of results here, and I'm gonna need somebody to witness it, please, so someone can sign that after. So, I'm just gonna go through the numbers like I did, and then I'll go through the declared elected eight councillors. Okay, so just quickly, Diana Valentine with 235, Alice Bignell, 211, Michael Bignell, 381, Derek Constant, 416, Rick Constant, 421, Louise Contois, 433, Janice Flett, 289, Riley Helcrow, 281, Savannah Henderson, 781, Courtney Hester, 508, Edwin Jebb, 567, Dale Knutson, 703, Matilda Laughlin, 389, John Paul Martin, 675, John Mackenzie, 328, Joel Kelly, 540, Charlene Spence, 248, Justin Spence, 479, Chris Young, 494, Franklin Young, 474. So you're declared elected councilors for the 2-year term, and well as your chief, which I announced last night, Chief Maureen Brown. Councilors are Councilor Savannah Henderson, Councilor Dale Knutson, Councilor John Paul Martin, Councilor Edwin Jebb, Councilor Joel Kelly, Councilor Courtney Hester, Councilor Chris Young, Councilor Justin Spence. So those are the declared elected, and like I said, I just need a witness. I don't know, no one stayed for speeches, so they're celebrating already. Congratulations. Yeah, just the witness, yeah. And put your treaty number 2.
My 4-digit.
Yeah, sure. And I know my election staff are all on, but I just really want to thank them as well for the last 2 days, and talliers and all the volunteers. My live stream guy, Rod, and everyone who helped feed us and keep us hydrated. Everyone have a good night and have a safe weekend. Thank you. Congratulations to your elected leaders.
All right, folks, so that's going to conclude this election. We'll do the numbers once more just to show you guys the results. Once again, congratulations to your new chief, the first female chief of OCN, Maureen Brown. Then you have your council. We have Savannah Henderson, Courtney Hester, Edwin Francis Jebb, Dale Knutson, John Paul Martin, Joel Pelly, Justin Spence, and Chris Young. Congratulations, guys. May you guys have a great term for the next 2 years. And we'll do the fireworks one more time. Let's enjoy the moment. All right, so that's going to conclude today. I hope you guys enjoyed the coverage. It was a long day, but we got it done, and I hope everybody's happy with everything that happened today. Just a quick reference here. If you guys are looking to get a hold of Chief Electoral Officer Stephanie Connors, you can get a hold of her elections 2023 at opaskwayak.ca. If you want me to come out and cover an event for you, you can message me directly via email, rod_arragada_204@yahoo.com. Any kind of event, not just elections, any kind of event, I can take care of it for you. Just let me know. And as long as you call me, I'll figure out whether I can help you out. But I should be able to help you out. And on that note, that's going to be it for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're going to go out the way that we came in with the outro. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for liking and sharing the stream. Thank you for inviting me to come out and cover your event. I hope you guys enjoyed the coverage. Congratulations to all the chief and council, and I hope to have a great term. May you guys succeed in the future for helping your community become more and more as the years go on. Anyways, that's going to be it for now. We'll see you guys next time, whenever that may be. Have a good night, everyone. Cheers.